Hello, this is part 2 with Miss Sadia. She's got so much knowledge that I just thought it's not fair to end where we ended, and I have a whole series of questions to ask her for this round. Hi again, Sadia.
Hi, Manahyl.
You are very knowledgeable, so I thought I should put down a few more questions that I know a lot of parents also have. Okay, so to start you off, tell me a little bit about what you think our parental philosophy should be in 2021. Given that we are in a pandemic, given that our kids are going through God knows what really, what would you say our parenting philosophy should ideally look like?
Okay, Manahyl, one, that's a very heavy question.
Sorry.
We're talking about a philosophy of parenting, and different parents have different upbringing. Our philosophy usually comes out of our own upbringing, our own parents and their parenting styles. However, I feel it's time that we revisit and we think a bit more about how we should be parenting our kids, considering the fact that they belong to a totally different age and time. And also because of COVID, children don't have access and they don't have social interactions. So I feel whatever kind of a parent you are.
Okay.
I mean, you may be a strict parent, you may have an authoritative style, you may have a laissez-faire style, I feel that it has to be more on thinking of the child as a competent individual rather than, that image of the child when it comes to mind, magar agar aap sunte hain na ki ji bachcha. So you think of a person who is helpless, who is not able to do things for themselves. However, world philosophies and international approaches to early childhood education are now telling us that the child is not helpless. The child has agency. The child can do a lot more if you allow children to do so. So when you're a parent, और हमेशा याद रखें, the expectations that you will have from your child, they will rise up to those expectations. So if you have low expectations, your child will fulfill your expectations. However, if you have a higher aim for them in terms of thinking them to be dynamic little individuals rather than कि ये तो कुछ नहीं कर सकता और हम पे ही dependent है, don't think, your mindset of a child needs to change now.
This is very interesting because you're right. When we think of children, we think that they are helpless and they require us for everything, but you're telling me that they're a lot more than
there's a lot more
what we give them credit for.
Absolutely.
And I think the more I meet educators like yourself, this theme just does come up where we do give our children a lot less credit for what they are owed.
Yeah.
So one is to kind of understand that your child is a functioning being and that we should parent them with that respect in mind,
Absolutely.
right? So in that, should we then let them make their own decisions and so on and so forth? So tell me a little bit about different kinds of children that parents will have and might have to kind of cope up with parental strategies to cope with certain behaviors. I want to know what should you do, let's say if you have a very shy child, how do you encourage that child to be more confident?
Okay, so Manahyl, let's look at you mentioned types of children. So let's look at a few types of children. So there may be children who are very proactive. There may be children who are very social. There may be children who are antisocial, and then there is a child who's unsocial. And there's a difference between antisocial and unsocial. An unsocial child or a person may be somebody who is who likes to keep to themselves, who doesn't like too much of interaction with another child or another person, and I think that's a type of personality and we all should respect that. सबसे पहले तो parents को ये समझना चाहिए कि हर बच्चा एक जैसा नहीं है. We are all catering to people who are individual beings. So one of your child, 3 children of the same parent can be totally different.
We're talking about how to tell the difference between an unsocial child and antisocial child. So what would you say
Right.
that is?
So an antisocial child, Manahyl, would be a child who has behavior issues in terms of, so we look at three things when we're looking at an antisocial child. It is that the child will harm himself or herself through their behavior, they will harm other children or adults, or they will harm the environment. ठीक है, तो अगर हम ये तीन चीज़ें किसी बच्चे में देख रहे हैं कि वो चीज़ें ख़राब कर रहा है, तोड़ रहा है, दूसरों को मार रहा है, या अपने आप को किसी तरीके से भी नुकसान दे रहा है, तो दैट behavior is termed as antisocial behavior. That is where a parent needs to step in and make sure that the child is guided and that they have adult supervision.
Okay.
However, the difference between this and unsocial is, so an unsocial child will not be of harm to anyone else. The unsocial child is a child who is perhaps an introvert, perhaps like to keep to themselves and doesn't like too much of social interaction, right? So these are also kind of children that parents don't like, because वो कहते हैं कि जी बच्चे अकेले बैठे हुए हैं, उनको किसी से बात नहीं करनी. So please try and understand that this is a personality type. You should not and cannot force an unsocial child before their time to go and socialize with other people.
Right.
So that's the difference.
Okay, and what if your child was the one that is aggressive in a situation? Let's say the child is aggressive at home or acts out with other children during playtime or in school. How do you deal with that? What are you looking for in that kind of a child?
Okay, so we are looking for, look, first we need to understand why the child is behaving in a certain way. Usually children with low self-esteem, usually children who are not giving too much autonomy at home or have helicopter parents who have been, curtailed at every step and every movement, will act out in school. So they need to have some sort of place where they can be themselves and do things that they haven't been able to do at home. So इसीलिए moderation is extremely important. I'm not a fan of helicopter parenting at all, because when you are after a child 24/7 and telling them and directing them at each step what they have to do, they lose their own confidence. अगर हम theories के अंदर जाएं, there's so much that is there, where we are told as adults कि बच्चों को autonomy कितनी देनी है, कहाँ देनी है.
So are you saying that giving a child more autonomy at home is less likely to produce an aggressive child?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, because you then allow that child to make small decisions.
Yes, and also
give me an example of how I could give my child a good exercise in practicing autonomy at home.
Okay,
what kind of things can I do?
So different age groups will have different opportunities to give autonomy to children. For instance, when a child is very young and growing up, the child will learn how to climb or hold things and pick things or throw things, or perhaps even test you out in terms of we were talking about के बच्चों ने जूते पानी में डाल दिए.
There is a lot of tests.
Phone, so that's there.
A lot of tests.
Yeah, so again I'm gonna repeat कि अगर if there is no harm to the environment or harm to the child or to you, then you should let that be. So for instance, if a child is making a mess, so now some mothers are very fussy कि बच्चा जब खाना खा रहा हो तो गंदा ना हो. I mean, if a child has the need to be messy, so we say कि जब तक आप messy नहीं होगे तब तक आप सफाई कैसे सीखोगे? So you have to let the child be and do not assist the child in everything that they are doing.
And what if the child is particularly, like I asked, aggressive? Is it a better idea to then how does cool off time work with toddlers? Tell me that.
Okay,
because
so
it's sometimes very hard to get them to cool off.
Yeah. I think time out is totally, for me, it's totally out. I mean, time out, yes, absolutely.
And it's one of our most favorite things.
It is.
So you're saying no time out?
No. So if you go into the research of time out,
okay,
and you actually study what happens when there is time out. So let's look at the, let's look at the psychology behind it and what's going on in a child's mind at that time. So what's happening is these 15 other children on one side and one child is sitting on one chair, and you're expecting the child to think about what they have done. The child will never think about what he or she has done. The child is only thinking at that time of perhaps the insult, or perhaps perhaps the lack of confidence that is somewhat developing inside at that point in time,
which makes this entire thing so counterproductive.
Yes, it does. That's what I try and tell everyone and teach everyone. जो आपका objective देखे ना, अगर objective ये है कि बच्चे को कुछ अच्छी चीज़ सिखा दी जाए, you're not teaching the child anything. So what will happen is कि डिसिप्लिन का क्या इशू है, सबसे बड़ा मनाहिल यही है कि जब हमारी क्लास में से टीचर चली जाती है, चिल्ड्रन स्टार्ट मिसबिहेविंग, दे स्टार्ट शाउटिंग. Why does that happen?
Oh my God, that was my favorite activity. Why does that happen?
I'll tell you why it happens. Because we have external discipline. Our disciplines are not internalized.
Right.
So when the timeout is out, then the child will do even more than what the child did before.
So interesting you say that, because you're right. We are, well, I used to be, or my peers, we were so different when the teacher walked out.
Yeah.
But I assumed that the whole goal and aim of education and knowledge would be that the children remain as they are, with or without a teacher.
Absolutely.
That's something to really think about.
It
wow.
is. It is.
I'm taking something back home.
I will also add on to this that, you know, it's said that one of Maria Montessori's quotes that I really like is, the children should work as if there is no adult present there.
Right.
So if your child is working with you being there but doesn't need your supervision, it is the best kind of parenting.
Independent learning.
And it is the best kind of teaching and learning as well, you know.
Alright.
So वही बात है कि जब तक आप ऊपर सर पे खड़े हैं तो बच्चा सही है, जैसे ही आप हटेंगे तो बच्चा. And what are we looking at? Basically look at the you know, the whole process of educating a child is also to educate them in terms of their behavior management. Right. One of the basic things of early childhood education and a goal is personal and social development, जिसके अंदर behavior management आता है.
Like so regulating your emotions and how you kind of
so
take
what
out
do? We talk to the child. We tell them what the natural consequences of a certain thing may be. So if you're throwing something down and you're breaking something, then what is happening? It's
what age would you say that we should have these conversations when they're breaking things?
Well, 2 years.
2 years,
yeah, definitely.
Because often parents think that my child is not going to understand what I'm saying. And a pediatrician told me that you could speak Russian to them, but they will know what you're saying based on how you're saying it.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of us, like you said right at the beginning, we don't give credit to the child for its innate ability to do quite a lot. We really think that they know nothing.
That they need an adult supervision.
Perhaps maybe that makes us feel better, right? That they really need us, and perhaps that's where it comes from. There are obviously many different types of kids, and kids are obviously going through so much as they learn, and each of them have their own way of responding to all their new learning experiences. I want to know from you as a professional, what do you think one could or should do if it turns out that your child at an early age is bullying other children and has become a bully? And on the flip side, I also want to know from you what to do if your child is the one being bullied. Because I believe bullying starts actually quite young, and we think that it starts way later, but it could happen. How early do you think?
Well, bullying can start at a very early age, like you rightly pointed. Let's look at where it comes from. It comes from the home. It comes from an adult who is perhaps even a parent figure, who may be very strict, who's bullying the child, or bullying another, family member at home. So it is all about power, Manahyl. It's about power and how children can exercise that right of power on other individuals, and that obviously will be a child who's their own age. So ये छोटे बच्चों में भी हो सकता है, बड़े बच्चों में भी हो सकता है. And how do we deal with that? How do we, discourage it? It's very difficult to find out if your child is being bullied, because at that point, a child doesn't know how to reach out. I think
and so how do you find out?
Yeah, so I'll give you my own example.
Yeah,
so when my daughter, my younger one, was in class 1 or 2 perhaps, I realized that she was being bullied since she was in preschool, and I didn't know as a mother. Although I know so much about parenting, and I thought that I was a very open mother, and I talked to my kids a lot about all these issues. However, she just couldn't gather the courage to talk to me about the fact that she was being bullied. Because I think it's an issue of self-esteem. It is also a time that children are beginning to realize that they are growing up, and that they can handle their own issues, and it's a very difficult topic to talk about. I think even if we are bullied in our childhood, I'm still unable to talk about it.
Because I would like that to change, right? Like
absolutely,
this cycle ends here with us.
Bilkul. So I think we should really, as parents, we should keep talking to children about this and tell them our own experiences of being bullied as a child. I think that has really, really helped me in terms of my kids opening up to me. So I'm a storyteller mom, really. That's what I tell myself. That's what I call myself. So I share all my childhood experiences with my girls. I make sure that they understand the difficult decisions that I've had to make in life, the difficulties that I've had to suffer, even bullying. So I've talked a lot to them about bullying, and also the fact that एक पूरी drill होती है कि आप अगर bully हो रहे हो तो what do you do, who do you reach out to?
It's often the people who were bullied that become the bullies in that cycle, right?
बिल्कुल, because now they want to exercise their power over somebody that they can. So this is an issue that perhaps we don't know it's happening right here. Literally, it's that kind of an issue. So पेरेंट्स को खुद से एक स्टेप अप करके बच्चों से इस बारे में बहुत सारी आप बात करें. मेक श्योर दैट यू कीप आस्किंग देम अगेन एंड अगेन हाउ देयर फ्रेंड्स आर. परहैप्स नॉट आस्क देम डायरेक्टली कि बुलिंग हो रही है, नहीं, because the child will not tell you.
They don't know how to recognize
and they don't
it
exactly
as bullying.
So talk about their friends, talk about things that they talk about in school, talk about feelings. I think that is very important. That's something हम ये पूछ लेते हैं दिन में क्या हुआ, but we don't talk about
how did you feel when that happened.
Yes.
Or
how did you feel in a certain situation? How did you feel when your teacher gave you a timeout? Or how did you feel when yesterday this is what I did to you? And I think parents should, rather than telling children to apologize for every little thing, they should also get into the habit of apologizing to their kids.
So basically model that behavior that you want your children to learn.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think all of you and people in the education field, they really try and drill this into our heads as parents, but for some reason, we have to keep coming back for that lesson. And
that's why we're having these video sessions, right, so that we keep reminding parents.
I know, it's very important, and part of the reason for coming here and talking about it is because I have recognized that there's so many women and parents and fathers out there who are looking for insight from people like yourself, who have experience in the field much more than we do, because as parents we want the best for them, and now we are slowly learning through these educational videos that what we think is the best for them is perhaps not the best, and all of us really need to tone down, take it down a notch, go easy on the goals, the milestones, because they're very young kids.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of pressure in the current climate.
And there's a long way to go.
Yeah. But I want to thank you for your time. I would like to wrap up our questions for today. But we'll be back perhaps
Inshallah.
with a whole other list of questions that we can drill you about.
Great. Thank you, Manahyl. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.
And inshallah, see you again.
Inshallah. Thank you for joining me with Miss Sadia today. We have learned yet a lot more that we can take back to our lives. Lots of things. The most important one being give your kids a lot more credit. They might be young, but they are not as silly as we may think. They are quite intelligent on their own, and I hope that you take back some of the lessons that we have learned from here. See you next time.